Hey, welcome back to Vice Grip Garage. The time, it's finally here. Let's get this LS and a 4L80E jammed into this 1974 Chevrolet C20 3+3. It's a crew cab flavor, basically. I had this engine built actually a couple years ago. You've probably seen it laying around in the background. I've moved it around 48.2 times once it tipped over. I've just been collecting on parts to get this thing done, and I finally have what I need to do that. As you could tell, I changed my mind last second on the color. I was going to do Chevy orange and try to hide the coil packs and make it look like an old school, but we're going to go shiny parts, which scare me, to be honest. But black block. I've got a couple things we got to do before we put this in, because I want to install it with the transmission. So of course we got to get the flex plate on. But first, let's get it on an engine rotator rotisserie 9000. And I got to change the oil pan, and I'll show you why. There's a couple different flavors when it comes to the oil pan here. I think the F body, they call it, is kind of the most common. They're shaped like this, but more shallow, so you have a little bit more ground clearance. So those are nice for, F bodies, first gens, things like that, even pickup trucks and stuff. But there's really three main pans. There's this one, which is a truck. Reminds me of the ladies at Walmart, they're saggy in the rear. Then you get the F bodies, again, those are shallow. And then you have the Batwing, which is the Corvette one. So they're really, they only come down to about here, but then they're shaped all wonky to get that oil capacity in there. I did already test fit this, which is why these ICT billet engine mounts are already in here. And I got these because how they're positioned in here, from what I read on the Google machines, is it brings the engine as high as possible, not only for header clearance, but also for oil pan clearance. But even when I drop this in with these mounts, I'm hanging down about 3 inches past the cross member, which in a normal swap, you're good. Just use the stock style truck pan, you'll be just fine. But if you recall, this one is C-notched, so we're dropped 6 in the rear and 5 in the front, which means, unfortunately, I'm pretty certain I'm going to be just banging that front end off the ground like a cabin screen door. So I need a little more clearance here. If you know how to tigglize and do aluminum work, you could probably just hack this up yourself, make a little more room, but I bought a different pan. So let's get this spun around, bolt that on. Then we'll move on to the flex plate and get this 4L80E bolted up. Well, we got her spun over here, so if we get this pan off too, we can also make sure that the crank sensor is the right one. 24 or 58, this is black, so it should be a 24. We're going to double check. If you got the gray sensor, apparently you got a 58, whatever that does. Yeah. Yep. This is all assembly lube and oil there, but interestingly enough, look at all this crud I picked up over the years. It used to be tightly sealed and wrapped in plastic, and then over the years that kind of went away. So that just shows you this was a fresh build. You got to keep these things locked up tighter than Alcatraz if you don't want any contaminants in there. Bolt, bolt, bolt. Pickup tubulator comes off. Get the windage tray off. Then we'll see the, the wheel of doom or whatever that is. Well, there we go. We can definitely see this is a 24. It's a 2-piece wheel. And I believe the 58 is a 1-piece. I could be wrong, not an LS guy, but pretty positive that's a 2-piece. Everything looks nice and clean in here otherwise. So I'm just going to clean this up. And I'll show you the pan we're going to go with here. It's a Moroso pan. So here you can see the obvious difference. And that's going to gain me that couple inches a feller needs off the ground there. So now hopefully when a guy's bottoming this out, coming out of the Waffle House, you know, we'll hit that cross member and leave the pan intact. And then of course the windage tray is going to be just a little bit different. And this has its own windage tray and pickup tube, so we'll get this cleaned up, get all this thrown on really quick, and get back to the flex plate. Got that finished up and even torqued, believe it or not. This one came a little blemished. I don't think I did that, but that's okay in this case. Doesn't really matter, obviously. I did a really bad job, but good enough for the girls we date. I actually took a license plate and just wrote it up the heads here. Came back in and, you know, touched her up a little bit. Got the drain plug in it. Even threw a filter on now. Remember the date and or the miles, gentlemen. I'm gonna let that dry for just a minute. Show you some other goodies. All this stuff came from Summit Racing, and one of the things I like about that site is I literally have bumper to bumper parts in here. Radio knobs to actual radiator. Battery, header, starter, flex plate. That's Terminator X system. So that's gonna be all the electro digitals. Valley cover, steering wheel adapter, thermostat, battery tray, fan relay kits, lightning hoses, lightning maker things, intake gaskets, valley gaskets, valve cover gaskets. I mean, the list is long. There's a fuel pump in here somewhere, sparkulators. So we should have everything here we need to make this thing run and then some. That's even a radiator support cover on the top. That's a Griffin radiator with dual fans. And then we'll use that relay kit and obviously the Terminator X-ray system to fire all that up. So all this is from Summit. Then everything else on the rig is basically from LMC. All of the body panels, parts, pieces, interior pieces, carpets, all of that stuff. So it's nice, in my opinion anyway, especially when I don't have time, I can just bleep bloop into these couple interweb sites and you can put everything in your basket and just be done with it. I don't gotta Google eyes and go to 87 different interweb pages basically. Onto the flex plate. Oh, it's like a painter's palette. I'm gonna put a little tree. This one from TCI is the one that I'm gonna use, but I've also got a stock style one here just so you guys can see the difference and maybe help you make a decision on, I don't know. You could choose which one you think you're gonna need for your build, I guess. This one is SFI certified. It's very heavy duty. It's hard to show you the thickness and the weight of this thing, but she's a hefty unit. It's also a machined one piece, so there's no welding or anything at all on this. It's a very stout unit. Moving on to the stock style one. It's very light, flexy. I guess that's why they call it a flex plate, maybe. And you can see that it's spot welded around here. That's going to be a weak point once you get to a certain HP level. But most commonly what happens, because these are so thin, this center section here actually breaks and starts rotating inside of the flex plate. Sounds horrendous. Sounds like a transmission issue, but it's just your flex plate. So if you're looking to do quite a bit of HPs or big launches and stuff like that, definitely would recommend stepping up. Also, there's a big debate online, and I've been there too, where you're putting these in going, well, I'll solve it for you. The pad always bumps out towards the transmission. The other side is your engine side. So in this case, there's a little bit of a pad that comes out. This would go on the engine. This would face the transmission. Same with this one. See those pads coming out? So it's going to go on like this. Pads come back towards the transmission. Again, I got this at Summit Racing. It even came with the hardware, and they're already gooped up with the never come out juice. That's pretty nice. I mentioned this before, but just a reminder, when you're doing any sort of build, take a lot of pictures on your computer pocket device so you can refer back to them later. And in this case, I'm going to take a picture of the SFI sticker here. But this here is pretty nice. They even labeled it, this side must face the transmission, so you don't mess that up. Guys, going to take a second and just show you guys this. There used to be, a couple years ago, maybe not anymore, I don't know, LS engine to like turbo 350, maybe a 400, 700 R4, whatever. The flex plate and torque converter, you got to adapt them, right? You got to get all this mated up. So there's a bunch of different kits out there now that will let you run a older style converter / transmission and bolt her up to your LS style engine. This one is a hub adapter, so I just wanted to show you guys how this works basically. The hub on that torque converter fits right into this crank perfectly. It's nice and snug. You can actually see I grease mine up a little bit. I don't know, I just do that. This is to a Turbo 400. This is a 5,000 stall performance converter, but this hub is bigger. It also sits back farther. So you need this here. This lays over that. Not only brings it forward, but then gives you the right diameter for this to slide right into there like that. So this actually came with this TCI flex plate, just in case you were doing an older style transmission. You would simply just seat this in there, and then after you seat your torque converter into your transmission, bolt everything together, the hub of your torque converter is going to slide right into this adapter. You just bolt her up and you're ready to go. In our case, we don't need this. Onto the transmission. This is a 4L80E built by Monster Transmission here, and signed by Anthony, which I actually met. I happened to be down there doing a burnout competition and got to do a facility tour, which is really cool. So I got to see how these are made from start to finish, and it's pretty incredible. All new parts, of course. They dyno test everything. And after seeing that process, I knew I had to have one. So here we are. This is the Super Sport upgrade. So it's supposed to handle up to 750 horsepower. And I believe this is a 97 to 99, because if you look at the oil cooler lines here, and I'm not a guru when it comes to 4L80 anythings. I'll tell you the favorite color of a Turbsky 350 or 400, but not so much with these. But I do believe the early models, both cooler lines were up here closer to the bell housing. And I know it's not a 2000 and up, 99 and up, because there's not the bolt provision at the 12 o'clock, which they started for the LS. So that's the one downside, is I think I'm only going to get 1, 2, 3, 5 bolts in this instead of 6 or 7. I don't know. We're just going to put it together. It's just getting messier by the millisecond. This torque converter here is built by Thor. Mind-boggling if you've ever seen the inside of a torculator converter. How does that work? I'm not sure. Wizards or something. Anywho, I digress. It's pretty neat because you give them the vehicle weight, what you're going to be using it for, your camshaft, all of it. And they make these specifically for your application. So this one is for that 4L80E, of course, LS power. We figure in between 400 and 600 horsepower for now. And then, we might add a sushi slicer down the road. But it's going to be enough torque converter to get this heavy truck going, but we didn't want anything too crazy that would create a bunch of heat in the transmission. So this should do pretty good. And it is a nice heavy duty unit. And I ain't kidding you. Guys got this seated in here. Of course, I filled it before you put it on. I'm using this Burn Rubber Brewing Co. ATF. This is a synthetic cider shift juice. It's recommended by Monster for this. And just a reminder, when you're setting these in, you want to feel it seat and then spin it, and it should seat again. And then it's going to get a little bit tougher to turn, and that's how you know you're all the way into that pump and engaged correctly. You don't want to be slamming the bell housing against the engine and bolting this up if this isn't seated correctly. Uh-oh. Not good for stuffing things in there. I got the engine and transmission mated up. That wasn't really slick. I like to do it by throwing the transmission on a furniture mover. Get them cheap ones at Hobo Freight, you know. And I just slide them together. Easy way to do it if a feller's by himself. Measured the flex plate to the torque converter. You want to be minimum of a 1/16 of an inch and maximum of about 3/16 of an inch. And unfortunately, I'm just a little bit over that. So I am going to run some washer spacers in there. And I grabbed a handful out of the bin, and what I do is actually take the old dial caliper and just, you know, check them. Get them as close as you can. Grade 8 washers work the best, usually because quality on them is a little bit better, but I found some cheapies in here that are going to work. So I'm going to put some blue Loctite on torque converter bolts, try to thread these in best I can, and we'll go from there. Well, I suppose it's about time guy goes ahead and just snips this in. Ideally, you got one of those crankulators, you can adjust the tilts, or you got another feller in here that can lift the transmission up and over, and also run a jack underneath the truck. I don't have none of that. So, I'm gonna attempt to do this myself. Been there, done it, way too many times. It's gonna take a little bit more time, but we'll get there. Biggest thing is just making sure that we don't drag the tail shaft on the ground back here, and just try to get this slipped in at the right angle so we're not prying on it a bunch to get it in the motor mounts here. Okay, here we go. I got a moving blanket down on the front here, and that'll just help it slide. That cross member here. Here we go. A little bit of downage. Easy. Oh, easy. Not faster, but slower. Easy. Okay. All right. We can go lift the transmission up so we can get our anglage correct. Wonder what Alan Jackson's doing right now. Probably not an LS install. I like that. Give me some downage. Boom. I just gotta snip some bolts in. Feels like that wheel in the sky just keeps turning. Hello. What do you want from me? Oh, we need some uppage. All right. Bolt pry downage hit. Down bolt, yep. Oh, there we go. There it is. We have an LS officially installed. It's officially in, fellers. It's been without an engine for years. These mounts from Summit work great. Look how much clearance there is there between the cross member and the pan. Most importantly, there's the cross member, and you see no oil pan, just transmission pan way back there. So that absolutely solved the concern about bottoming out. And I also moved it forward a little bit. We've got a 1/4 inch here exactly and a 1/4 inch there. So there's some room there. The trans dipstick isn't smashed against the firewall like I've seen with some other mounts on the interwebs there. So if you're thinking of doing a swap, these ICT ones work pretty slick. Still have to do transmission cross member and figure out that angle, so this might change just a little bit. I've got a universal one that Monster Transmission sells, and then I have the original one that supposedly you can repurpose a couple bolt holes. I just have to crawl under there and take a peek and see what we got going on. That's going to do it for this episode. Coming up next, things are going to escalate quickly. We're going to throw some headers on. We're going to put the intake on this. I have a Holley low profile intake. We're also going to put an entire accessory system on. So power steering pump, ice cube maker, water pump, charging whirler, you name it. We're going to finish off the front end, even have a damper that comes with that kit and the belt. The hope is to have this thing looking like, you know, she's very close to running without the wiring. We'll see you soon. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate you very much.